Art of the Kickstart, episode 22.
Welcome to the artofthekickstart.com, where entrepreneurs are constantly pushing the envelope to build businesses of greatness. Inventors are innovating and creating the products of the future, and backers stand strong for what they believe. These are some of the great thinkers, inventors, and leaders of our time. Here are their stories.
Hey guys, welcome to Art of the Kickstart. Today I'm extremely excited to have Jonathan Sabutis, highly accomplished Brooklyn designer, on the line, sharing his story of how he created the all-in-one bike tool. Thanks so much for coming today, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
So I like to kick off these interviews with a success quote, something to really motivate people that you live by. Do you have anything good?
Yeah, well, I guess the brand is all about living a minimal lifestyle, doing more with less. That's sort of that was the goal of the Ring tool. You know, as much function in a small form factor as possible.
And there really is a ton of function. You check out the video, and it really is. It's a bajillion tools in one. It's this tiny little thing the size of a quarter, and you can use it to fix household issues, your bike, anything. Can you take us back to the inception of this idea? Where did it come to you from?
Well, it actually came out of just my commute to work. I live in Brooklyn, and I bike to work in Manhattan. And I guess I wanted a tool with me that was, small enough to fit on my keychain. And as far as I could see, that did not exist. All the multi-tools that were out there were too large and bulky. So, and because maybe I'm just lazy, I don't want to have to remember to put something in my bag every day. I wanted to have something on my person at all times. And I started prototyping, and that's where the Ring tool was born. And I was actually surprised later to find that it had many applications.
So you've got some practice in doing this and creating products. What would you say for people that don't, people that want to create something that's in their head? How can they work through that prototyping phase that you did to minimize pain, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I definitely had an advantage. I know CAD software, and I know how to go through the steps of finding a manufacturer, coming up with drawings, all that stuff. But, it's not rocket science. I mean, if you have an idea, I would suggest just diving into the product category as much as possible. Talk to as many people who are using similar products as possible. Bounce your idea off of people. I mean, I think one tendency that people have is to be very guarded about an idea they have, when in fact, at its early stage, an idea is sort of worthless. I mean, if
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, because it's really the hard work that sort of sets it apart, and whether you're able to actually execute it. So the more eyes you can get on it, actually, the better. That's one of the good things about doing a Kickstarter. I mean, you can kind of get feedback even before you're placing that manufacturing order. So,
what kind of feedback did you get? How did it influence the Ring tool?
Yeah, I mean, people had a lot of suggestions for features. I think the spoke wrenches that are on the tool now are actually a suggestion that someone, or a few people had actually had. And because it didn't negatively affect the design, I thought it actually was a great thing to add without taking anything away. So, length of the wrenches itself was something that was extremely nuanced. It couldn't be too long to be poking you in the butt, but it couldn't be too short where you couldn't get the distance to get into some of the harder to reach places that every bike has.
So you're creating this product, and as you're doing it, you're also moonlighting, as we were talking about earlier. You're working at a design firm. Where do you find the time to create something like this, to get your campaign launched? That's a ton of work. How do you do that?
Yeah, just, a lot of late nights and hard work. It's definitely not easy. It's been a sort of stressful year, but the rewards are ultimately worth it. I mean, I'm making the leap now into making this a full-time gig, and so I feel like the hard work has paid off.
Congratulations on the jump, by the way, and your awesome campaign. Really, you made a nice, simple, it was just a real personal, down-to-earth video of you describing what the tool could do. Is that what you would advise most Kickstarter campaigns to do? Some of them look like Hollywood blockbusters, and the other one look like their little kid filmed it. What would you say?
Well, I honestly think, my video was very, very basic. I think probably it hurt me that it wasn't a little bit more well-produced. I just didn't have the means of doing that. I did everything myself. I'm not a filmographer, but I would suggest sort of working with someone who knows what they're doing in that regard. If you need graphic design, hire a graphic designer. If you need film, hire a cinematographer. If you can afford because yeah, the better your campaign can be, the more success you'll have in general.
And where are you guys going next with this? You said you're going full time. You had a campaign that basically 5x'd your goals. What's the next step for your company?
That remains to be seen. I mean, I think I need the time now to really think of the direction. I have some ideas. I think basically, like I said, the brand will head towards this idea of minimal lifestyle, doing more with less. I really don't want to create product that is sort of extraneous in your life. So I don't want to just create a better
junk
chair. Yeah, because there's enough of that going on already. So unless it solves a problem or offers some sort of affordance, I think it's kind of meaningless. And that's just sort of a mantra that I adhere to as a designer. I wish more people did, because there's just a lot of making for the sake of making. But yeah, we have some ideas, perhaps a hammer, a cell phone case, something like that in the works. Just need time now to get into it. So I'm excited to do that.
What were some of the challenges you had once you completed the campaign? You've got the successful campaign. You've got all these backers excited about your products. I'm sure there were challenges fulfilling that. Can you take us through some of those?
Yeah, I worked with a few fulfillment companies to get the orders filled. That was difficult. Working out, just pricing. The ring tool is very small, so it was easy to ship it letter rate, but a lot of fulfillment companies wouldn't do that. Just, I guess, feeling out how to do all that stuff was not easy. Feeling out how to get the best price for a manufacturer, it takes a lot of time and patience. Sometimes you have to almost pit two manufacturers against each other in order to get a better price, which is not fun, but I think a reality of the business. I mean, especially when you're just starting out. I mean, they're oftentimes not willing to take a risk on someone who's just incorporating very recently. So yeah, it was sort of a learning experience. I mean, you sort of learn as you go. I guess you can read all the business books you want, but ultimately you just have to sort of dive into it.
So speaking of pricing, how do you price a tool like this? It serves so much functionality, but it's this tiny little piece of metal. How do you justify to people what it's worth, and how did you come up with the price?
Well, I guess the price is based on I guess the perceived value. If you look at other bike tools that offer the same amount of functions, it's around that same price, even though it's actually a smaller form factor. The manufacturing process used is not a cheap one, but it does offer this sort of unique precision part, which I think is sort of beautiful, and it's indestructible. And if you think about it in terms of its lifespan, it's intended to last forever. I mean, it's actually a pretty affordable product, but I think people compare it to a $6 tool from China, which is going to fall apart. To me, the comparison is one where it makes sense to make the investment, but I understand not everybody thinks in that way.
So you create this product, and it's a very minimalistic tool. It helps people in a very simplified way. Yet creating it wasn't simple. It had to take a while. While you're moonlighting, you're working at your design firm. What was the timetable that Ring Tool was on your mind? You were working on creating the campaign, and getting everything ready before you hit that go button on Kickstarter.
I think it must have been around 6 months of development before launching. I mean, I even feel like the development wasn't finished before I launched, which in one way it was a good thing, because like I said, I received some feedback from people based on the design. But I think at a certain point you just have to sort of drop the pencil and get the thing out there, because if you have what I think is a good idea, I mean, many times someone else has a similar idea. So there's something to be said about just this expediency of getting things visible as soon as possible.
Yeah, a ton of keychain-based tools kind of have popped up over Kickstarter on the last couple of years. How do you deal with that? Do you view them as competitors? Do you view them as allies? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the context. I mean, and the Hex Flex was one that sort of popped up 2 months after mine, which I didn't even see until recently, actually. I thought it was a little close for comfort. I mean, they used the same materials, the same function, the same colors. I even emailed the guy about it, and I asked him if he was inspired by the Ring tool. He said he was quote unquote motivated. So I guess I guess the design is different enough. I realize that, but I do wish Kickstarter did a better job of curating their projects so that you're not being knocked off by the same company you're launching your project on. I mean, There's worse examples. I think the one that I've even posted an update about is the machine age wallet, which was knocked off by one called the Slim wallet. It's like a machined wallet, and that is just a blatant knockoff. And the fact that Kickstarter did not catch that is sort of offensive to me. I mean, I know they claim not to review projects, and that sort of avails them of this responsibility of looking for intellectual property infringements. But I mean, now these guys are in legal battles, that they can't afford. It's just, I feel like they could go the extra step and, protect small time makers like us. I mean, it's just ridiculous. This is happening on such a small scale, and especially from an American company too. I mean, they're based in Greenpoint, Kickstarter is. So I don't think I'll do another campaign with them, frankly, until they change their policy, I should say.
Yeah, it's kind of scary. And I mean, part of it's business, but at the same time, you think a lot of these guys, they don't have the money. They could never defend any kind of patents against big companies because it just comes down to a legal battle. But that's kind of the reality of the grind, I guess.
Yeah, enough of it goes on in the real world, and it could be prevented if Kickstarter would just take the responsibility to be a sort of curator for what they claim is a site that launches new and innovative products. I mean, how can you have many of the same new and innovative product? It doesn't make sense to me. So,
and now I want to jump into the launch round. Sound good, Jonathan?
Sure.
Welcome to the launch round, where we take our guests through a series of rapid-fire questions geared towards unlocking the inner inventor and entrepreneur in all of us. Get ready to blast off and unlock your inner potential. Let's do this.
So, Jonathan, what does it mean to be a designer?
Oh, I think just to be curious about the world. I think of it as like the merging of art and engineering. Yeah, I mean, it's a way of being a problem solver and a critical thinker, I guess, at its core.
You're clearly influenced by minimalism, living simply. Where do you see that movement going in the coming years?
I think it's especially attractive to people of younger generations because we're so bombarded visually by just the world around us. And I think that's why the stark contrast of minimalism holds so much weight nowadays, not only visually, but just in terms of the amount of stuff that we own. I believe it's better to own fewer things that are of higher quality. I think actually you could even make a scientific argument that it's better for our brains to have less clutter in the house. Your stress levels are lower. You're not frustrated by things that fall apart on you. So I believe that very strongly, and that's where I'm trying to address the brand.
I think your brand's definitely going in the right way. And speaking of, what are some of the greatest, most influential designs you've ever seen? What have really inspired you or just made your jaw drop?
I guess definitely the work of Dieter Rams, is a good one to cite. I mean, he had worked on radios, shavers, just things that worked simply and beautifully. I like his philosophy of no more design than necessary. There's no fluff there, I guess. It's just simple functionality. I think Apple does a pretty good job of that. There are things that are well made. I guess there's sort of a built-in obsolescence with things like computers, and that's actually one reason I probably will stay away from that category. But they still, I think, try to make things as good as possible.
So from interviewing a ton of entrepreneurs, I found that books are really influential in their lives. What have been 3 that have really influenced you as a designer, an entrepreneur, and someone creating life?
Well, there's one called The Art of the Start, which is really good, a good business good business book. I think the work of Donald Norman, psychologist who has worked on a lot of the sort of psychology behind why people buy the things they do, would be a good place to start as well. Yeah, anything. Kenya Hara wrote a great book called Designing Design. I think his work is a good example of good minimalist design. I mean, he's done a lot of work for Muji, which is the brand of no brand, and it's something along the lines of what I'm trying to accomplish with Reductivists. This idea of a brandless, sort of almost formless design, just as little design as possible.
If you could meet any entrepreneur, past or present, and ask them one question, who would it be and what would you say?
Yeah, I would love to pick the brain of like a Nikola Tesla or someone like that. I feel like he understood the world maybe in a different way than people do today. And I'm not sure what the question would be, but I'd love to just have that conversation.
And then, last question of the launch round, a little bit more about you. So, as a child, what did you envision growing up to be?
Oh, I think surprisingly, it was something like an inventor, or of course, I wanted to be an astronaut or an engineer. I had drawn like some crazy solar panel house in my little sketchbook as a kid. It looked kind of like a toilet. It was pretty hideous. But I think it's funny that my thinking, even at a young age, sort of pointed to where I am now. Yeah, I think my beginnings were in art, but when I learned that I could take art and use it in a more meaningful way and to solve problems with it, I think that was a really great realization.
I want to jump back into your campaign, into Ring Tool again.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look back at the Ring Tool campaign. You can come at this from a few months' perspective. You're well outside of the campaign. If you had to go back and redo it, what would you change? What would you do differently that others can learn from?
Make a better video, for one thing, as we had talked about before. I'm not sure I would have used a fulfillment company again. You just in terms of dollars, you lose a lot of money in shipping, and then even more if you're paying someone to do it. So I think maybe to have crash course through a long weekend with a friend or two and got the orders out may have been a better idea. Again, it was hard because I was working full time somewhere to do that. Yeah, just maybe to have had the product further along than it was. I mean, I guess that afforded me the advice that I got, but I felt like it did sort of hurt me that it took so long for the orders to get delivered, even though it was what I had promised. I wish it could have happened sooner, but the reality is that manufacturing just takes a while to happen.
You never know what's going to happen in the real world. And last question, you've been an awesome guest, Jonathan. It's been awesome to have you on the show. Could you share one piece of advice for inventors, entrepreneurs, designers, people that want to create something amazing in the world? If you could tell them anything, what would you say?
Yeah, I would say, try to do something meaningful with what you're trying to make. Try to really solve a problem. We have enough design that is sort of just all over the place and cheap and plastic. Like, try to use nice materials. Like, if we continue on the course we are now, where it's just like so much junk, we're going to continue filling landfills. And I don't know, I feel like that's a cliff we're sort of approaching. I think we really need to be more responsible with what we're making, and only to make things if there's like a real need for it.
Absolutely. I could not agree more with you, Jonathan. That's such a great way to close this interview. Guys, there is environmental, whatever that word is, negative impacts of design. Make sure you're designing amazing things, or just don't do it at all. Thank you so much for coming today, Jonathan. You've been an awesome guest. Give yourself a plug. Where can people reach out to you, see what you're doing, and connect with you?
Thanks very much, Matt, for having me. It's been a pleasure. You can get in touch with me or check out our projects, current and upcoming, at reductivist.com. Look for new products coming soon. They're in the works, so I'm excited to have them out in the world.
Excited about the future as well. Can't wait to see what comes out of your little design studio. Let us know when you've got more stuff coming out, and we'll try to get you back on the show and do a follow-up. Thank you so much, Jonathan. You've been a great guy.
That would be great. Okay. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Art of the Kickstart, where we believe makers, inventors, and entrepreneurs are changing the world and bringing humanity forward into the future. I'm your host, Matt Ward, and it's been a pleasure guiding you through this journey of creation and innovation. I hope you're inspired by this, and check out artofthekickstart.com to get more information and tactics to help you launch your own business, product, and dreams.